Yes, this is the history I told you about in my update, the video about Hannibal. It says the triumph coin of Hannibal 203 BCE. Note there are no authentic images of Hannibal, and there is no proof that Carthaginian coins shows his likeness. However, these coins do exist, and logically, who else but the great Hannibal, our Murakami, what most people call him, Hannibal, would be they but on a coin? Certainly not an ordinary elephant rider. This is the guy that attacked Rome. I believe he was a Hamite, I believe, what Hannibal was. Most people try to say he was Hebrew, but actually he was a Hamite, according to Babylon Timbuktu. Okay, right into it. Before I get in this book, Babylon Timbuktu, it says the city in the language of Hannibal. I'll read this first. It says, at the ruins of Carthage, archaeologists have found about 4,000 inscriptions in the ancient language of Canaan. Nahum Schultz says these inscriptions date from the time of Nehemiah, Simon the Just, of Hannibal, and of Hasdrubal, says Schultz. And most valuable, all we have found again that the ancient language written of Canaan, the rich idiomatic speech of a city which once counted 700,000 inhabitants, and we Hebrew writers, we who wrote and feel in our biblical tongue. That's what it says. Biblical tongue. We have recognized that this is recalled the Phoenician language is nothing more nor less than Hebrew or pure Hebrew dialect, nearly the same as well spoken in the country of Israel, what it says, but we know it's Yasharah. The population of Carthage was derived from Palestine. It is a civilization was Hebraic in origin. Schultz is certain, after much research, that the language Hannibal spoke and which he directed his troops was Hebrew. So at first, this book's saying he's Hebrew. I don't know if he was Hamite or Hebrew, but you know, of his origin, I wouldn't say he's an Israelite, but you know, he's probably a mixed breed of Yasharal and Canaanite. Canaanites are not Hebrews. Canaanites are Hamites. We conquered them during the time of Yahushua, known as Joshua the Nun, the son of Nun. I mentioned that in here in this book. Okay, that's what it says. But the population of Carthage was derived from Palestine, and the civilization was Hebraic. That's what I said. Okay, I just read that, and it says, you know, truth was Hebrew. There is evidence that the Carthaginians possessed a high priesthood. Their ceremonies and sacrifices were similar to the rituals found in the book of Leviticus. Well, the Carthaginians are a mixed breeded. The Carthaginians were Canaanites, by the way. They're Canaanites, but the people that mixed with them were Israel. They were Yasrolites, known as Israelites, that most people say today. These are all so-called black people, but they're two different types of black people. One was Shemitic, one was Hamitic. So he was a mulatto. So basically, they're saying this guy was a dark-skinned mulatto. That they did the same priesthoods we taught them. We enslaved them, and we conquered them, and we enslaved them, I believe, and that's why they got our customs. And according to some inscription, the Hebrew tribes of Asher and Zebulun were in Carthage. That's right. So Asher and Zebulun did conquer Carthage then. So see, this is the time that we was all scattered out. This is the time. I think this is the time that, I don't know if David was ruling or this is after David's rule. It's somewhere. So if this was before, okay, this is probably when David was ruling, like Nehemiah. No, hold on. Okay, Jeremiah and the prophets and David, they already ruled. So this is after, when we was all in captivity. So this is when we're not really fully ruling. We were scattered out. This is when we're still scattered out. Okay. And they took over North Africa. That's what we did. We stayed in that region, which is where we come from. They call us desert dwellers anyway. And that's what it says. Hebrew and Israelite were in Carthage from the foundation of the city. After the ruins of Carthage were excavated, many inscriptions contain many Hebrew names, such as they said Joab or Joas and Joel, Yael, Yahwis, or Yab. Those were, in Hebrew if you speak Hebrew. But if it's, but it says Joab, Joas, and Joel, but Yael is Joel. I forget the other two, but the city of Tunis, known as Tunisia today, is said to be neither Arab nor European. Tunis is a, they say Jewish, but I want to say Hebrews. Tunis is a Hebrew city, I don't use the term Jewish, that's a made-up term. Nowhere else does the Hebrew feel at home as he does in Tunis. Schultz says, the beautifully indeed Tunis and infuriated of Hebrew Carthage is the internal city of Hebrews. I don't use the term Jew because that's a made-up term. For like the phoenix, Hebrews have risen again and again and out of the ashes their destruction. After the sacking of Carthage, and they said, this is us again, Hebrews were found again in Carthage under Roman domination. After the Byzantine Empire persecutions, they fled into the desert. Yes, he was part of the Byzantine Empire, and the reason why we fled was in Roman slavery. This is a time when Rome was ruling and tried to defeat Hannibal, and under the persecution of the Arabs and Hebrews, and somewhat survived the catastrophe of outer catastrophe. And I'm going to get to the Moorish Empire right quick, and the Fezes and the Tangiers, and it's a long one. The Sultan, most of you know the Moorish Empire, they were Ishmaelites, they were Fuddites known as Libyans. The Libyans of Fud, they had some Hamites, and then you had a few Israelites join this empire too. It was three types of nations became the Moorish Empire, being that you see today. I'm going to read half of this. I'm going to say, in less than 100 years, the Black Arabs had pushed their way completely across of North Africa in the 7th century. At this time, the Arabs were black. They had not mixed much with other people. The Arabs did penetrate into the interior of Sahara Desert, but only in the small numbers, so that the territory remained basically, they would say African, but I would say Aquilanian, or Hamites. That's what they are. Moulay Adidris, descendant of Ali, the son-in-law of Mohammed, brought northern Morocco under his control late in the 7th century. His son and successor was Idris II, who founded the Kingdom of the Fez. Kingdom of the Fez. I'm going to stop right here and do whole nother video that and read it again. This is about Hannibal and Carthage right now. So that's in Babylon Timbuktu. You can get this at it's page 107 to 108. It's in the final direction of the Black Hebrews. They would say Black Jews. I don't use the term Black Jews or Hebrews. Just say Hebrews of Africa. But it says Black Jews of Africa in this book, but I prefer Hebrews, chosen ones. So enough of the Babylon Timbuktu and production of this book. I'm going to get right into the information I got on my screen here. See how much time I got. Okay, good time. Carthage before Hannibal. Carthage, one of the most famous cities of antiquity, was founded on the north coast of Africa, like I just mentioned, by the Phoenicians of Tyre. Circa in 800 114 BCE. Founded of Carthage was closely followed by the establishment of the Phoenician cities in western Mediterranean. That's right. From them on, the power of expanding into Spain, Sicily, numerous other places in North Mediterranean. This brought them into direct conflict with the empires in Rome and Greece. At the start of the 3rd century BCE, Carthage was supreme in western Mediterranean, enjoying the security of a sea power and trading with her nations in Sicily, Sardinia, and Spain, as well as with shores of Africa. Rome was painfully struggling to attain mastery of central and southern Italy, where she had absorbed the power and culture of the Etruscans, or Etruscans, whatever you want to call them. That's the Japhites. That they got conquered, by the Africans, or the Hamites. Etruscans were Japhites, by the way. Gradually forged a federation of small states. It must have already become clear that there was not going to be room in the Mediterranean for both Rome and Carthage. The clash came over Sicily in the First Punic War, 264 to 241 BCE, at the end of which Carthage lost Sicily. They did lost Sicily. Sicily is southern Italy, by the way. Rome's victory in Sicily induced Rome to cross the narrow straits to Africa, known as Akiba Land, or the land of Ham, and undefeated from Sicily. In the best tradition of Dunkirk, Hamilcar was able to put down immunity in the Carthaginian army, restored order to it. Tongue twister. The political situation at the time had strangely modern flavor. Rome pursued a policy of Cold War, during which time annexed the Sardinia and Corsica, increased the reparations with Carthage was obligated to pay, declared the Roman sphere of interest in Spain to extend from the north down to the river of Ebro. In Carthage, the peace treaty was in power with the commercially minded. Hamilcar Barca, on the other hand, had a popular support and the command of armed forces. With these, he proceeded to develop the Carthaginian hold on Spain. They was in Spain too. Carthage, them Canaanites were in Spain. That's mentioned in this book too. Obscenely to enable Carthage to pay reparation to Rome, but in fact, because he saw in Spain a source of manpower, supplies, and base from which to attack Rome. With his son-in-law Hasdrubal and his 4th son Hannibal. So Hannibal is the 4th son and son-in-law of Hasdrubal. Hasdrubal, Hanno, and Mago, the lion's brood, as he called them, Hamilcar Barca soon succeeded in turning the southern Spain into a sort of an empire where New Carthage or Carthagina was found. Yeah, that's right. And most Carthaginians were Moors too, by the way. There was Canaanites, there was Futites, known as the Libyans, people that's called Phut. Then you had some Ishmaelites. Then you had some of the Yashrualites that was part of the Moorish Empire, which means black. In 228 BCE, he fell in battle, was succeeded by Hasdrubal, his son-in-law, the rise of Hannibal. And here's what we're talking about. Hannibal. Marable, how you want to. The army thereupon unanimously chose Hannibal to be their general, in spite of his youth, because of his shrewdness, courage, which he had shown in their service. Hannibal was then 26 years old. This strange man, whose name means joy of Baal. And what's Baal mean? The idol god they worship. The Canaanites worship Baal. It's kind of like the Baal god they worship. That was the time. See, that shows you that they're Canaanites right there. His name means joy of Baal. Had accompanied his father on his campaign in Spain. At the tender age of 9, Hamilcar Barca had agreed to take him on his campaign on one condition, that before the sacrifice which he was the making to the gods, Hannibal should swear internal enmity to Rome. No man ever kept a promise more faithfully. Hannibal's first military success was in Saguntum, excuse me, which participated in the Second Punic War. It is quite clear that Hannibal carried out carefully prepared plan which he had inherited from his father. His object was nothing less than destruction of the power of the Rome before Rome destroyed Carthage. Rome's most vulnerable spot was in Italy itself, where Rome Federation of States was still loose, and the Celtic tribes, or the Gauls, in north were in revolt. But since Carthage had lost command of the sea to Rome, how was Hannibal to get into Italy with his troops? The Romans never imagined for one moment that he could or would make the journey of 1,500 miles overland from Spain across to the Pyrenees, the south of France, and the Alps. But that was exactly what Hannibal had decided to do. Having decided on his strategy and select his theater of operations, Hannibal followed two principles which have grown. Hannibal followed two principles which have grown no less important since his day. The seizure of the initiative and maintenance of the element of surprise, 218 BCE, may seem a long time ago, but the manner in which Hannibal set about his task is identical with that which a competent commander would follow today. Hannibal first secured his bases at the Carthage and Carthaginian. Next, he collected detailed information about the countries and the peoples he proposed to the past. For this purpose, he sent for messages like legion officers from the Gaulish tribes and asked for detailed accounts of the terrain and the fertility of the country at the foot of the Alps, in the midst of the Alps, and the plain of the River Po. Today, this aspect of Hannibal's planning would come under the heading of logistics. He also wanted to know the number of inhabitants of the various populations, their capacity for war, particularly whether their enmity against the Romans was maintained. This could be called the political intelligence. He was particularly anxious to win over the Gauls on both sides of the Alps, as he would only be able to operate in Italy against the Romans if the Gauls cooperated with him. He therefore planned a campaign of psychological warfare to raise and maintain the morale of his supporters and to undermine the enemy's will and power to resist. The operation began in great secrecy in the spring of 218 BCE, after Hannibal delivered a morale-boosting speech to his troops. Moved by emotion, indignation, and lust for conquest, his men leaped to their feet and shouted their readiness to follow Hannibal. He praised them for their valor and fixed the date of D-Day, which was about the end of May. In this episode, Hannibal's actions were paralleled 2,000 years later by another young general of about his age, like him, across the Alps, and again like Hannibal, to make his initial reputation, thereby Napoleon Bonaparte. It says thereby Napoleon Bonaparte, like they trying to say he was around back then, but that's probably a different Napoleon. I mentioned right here Napoleon Bonaparte. From Carthaginian, Hannibal marched his army to Ebro, there to Empress, through the Pyrenees and along the shore of Mediterranean through the south of France, fighting much. This is a different Napoleon Bonaparte, I believe, not the one in the 17th century or the 19th century Napoleon Bonaparte. This is a different one. Fighting much way as far as the Rhone. There is a little doubt about the route which Hannibal's army followed, but from the Rhone over the Alps and into Italy, Hannibal's route has been a bone of contention for 2,000 years. Wow. Crossing the Alps. See how much time I got. Yeah, that's a lot of time I can skim through. Crossing the Alps is an invasion of Italy. I'm gonna get that. Crossing the Alps, the Battle of Cannae, Hannibal's political strategy. That's a lot. I'm gonna get Crossing the Alps, invasion of Italy. I'm gonna do a part 2 to this. Hannibal left Spain and Italy in the spring of 218 BCE with about 35,000 seasoned troops. His force included the squadron of elephants. The Romans planned to intercept him near Marseille, and after dealing with him, to invade Spain. Publius Cornelius Scipio was in charge of this operation, with Tiberius Sempronius led another army in Sicily, destined for Africa. See, at the time they didn't call it Africa. Scipio named the northern part Africa. His name was changed to Scipio Africanus, by the way. This is talking about Scipio Africanus too. Had to send his legions to deal with the Gallic revolt, and by the time he reached the Marseille by sea, he learned that he had missed Hannibal by only a few days. Thereupon, Scipio returned to northern Italy and awaited Hannibal's arrival. In the meantime, Scipio had sent his brother Janal, or something like that, into Spain with an army to cut off Hannibal's from his brother's Hasdrubal. Appears that Hannibal crossed the Alps somewhere between the Little St. Bernard and Monte Genevra passes. He did not begin to cross until early fall, which meant that he encountered winter-like conditions in the Alpine region. His force suffered greatly from the elements and hostility of local tribesmen. He lost most of his elephants, and by the time he reached northern Italy, his army was reduced to about 26,000 men, 6,000 whom were cavalry. However, the number was quickly raised about 40,000 by an addition of the Gauls. Okay, that's the total. 6 plus 6 is 6 plus 5. 6 plus 8 is 14. 6 plus 6 is 12. So that's about right, 40,000, or adding or something like that. Yeah, I ain't that good at math, but that's a lot of troops. But let's see, the invasion of Italy. Okay. See how long this is. Invasion of Italy. The first engagement with Rome troops, Hannibal's cavalry won a mirror victory over Scipio's forces near the Tugnesis River. This was followed by the decisive victory at the Tirba River in December 218 BCE over Rome legions led by Scipio and Sempronius, who was recalled from Sicily. When Hannibal invaded Italy, Hannibal's superior numbers in cavalry, his skill, his combined use of cavalry, infantry were key factors in his success of Tirba. As later victories, Hannibal had decided advantage in northern Italy, where the Gauls were friendly to his cause, where his cavalry could operate in broad plains. The Roman therefore decided to withdraw to central Italy, awaiting Hannibal, who began to cross the Apennines in the spring of 217 BCE. That's in that spring of that year before, of the century. The mountains again proved costly both to his army personally to Hannibal, who lost the sight of one eye from an infection. The Roman consuls for 217 BCE, Gaius Flaminus and Servilius Geminus, had stationed themselves at Arretium and Arnaminium to guard both possible routes, west and east, by which Hannibal might cross the Alpines. Hannibal selected Flamius' western route, but that the consul refused to give battle alone, allowing Hannibal to pass. Flaminus followed, harassing the Carthaginian army and hoping to meet Geminus farther south, where they would jointly give battle. However, Hannibal ambushed Flaminus in a narrow pass near Lake Trasimene and destroyed almost the entire army of 25,000 at Rome. Quintius of Fabius Maximus. Fabius Maximus was elected dictator by the Centuriate Assembly rather than join battle with Hannibal, who had marched south into Apulia. He decided on a policy of caution and harassment that would help Hannibal moving and gradually wear him down. Hannibal moved from Apulia into Campania, followed and watched by Fabius, who finally bottled him up in an area unfavorably to the cavalry, decided to give battle. At night, however, Hannibal has sent oxen toward Fabius' army with burning sticks tied to their horns, while the Romans investigated what they considered an attack. He escaped with his army to Adulia, where he wintered. This is part 2 of Hannibal, and I'm going to do the Battle of Cannae. So with that, I want to say shalom.